A very warm welcome to the month of June 2013. The year 2013 is split right down the middle now, like they say. We thank God for being alive, even as we, with a deep sense of loss, mourn the passing away of 159 of our compatriots who lost their lives in the ill-fated Dana airline plane crash of June 3rd, 2012. God Almighty will continue to abide with those that they left behind. Two things they say are certain in life: death and taxes. For those of us who are still here, we must pay our taxes. And so on this episode, we're going to be taking another look at presumptive tax, the tax regime designed to take care of operators in the informal sector, underground economy, shadow economy, call it what you like. Those business owners who keep little or no records, who in the main are always on the move, or at least don't have what you can call permanent establishment, but who, no matter, still have to pay whatever little amount they can pay as taxes. You will recall that a few episodes ago, precisely in the month of April, we brought you the story of the sensitization workshop on developing an effective presumptive tax regime for Nigeria, which was held in Abuja on Thursday, the 4th of April, 2013. So you may ask, what is presumptive tax and why at this time?
Presumptive taxation is an arrangement where we want to put people to tax, particularly those that are not able to, or those that will not, where it is impossible for them to keep their record for tax purposes. And most times you will find this in the informal sector. So it is a kind of getting a threshold or a benchmark, which most times is used as a minimum base for taxation.
We have an informal sector that is arguably bigger than the formal sector. We have issues with the size of our taxpayer register. If you take a cursory look, you will have no doubt that in your mind that register is indeed, relative to the population of the country, very small. The point to note is a point that has been made repeatedly, that Nigeria cannot continue to place the level of reliance that it still does on income from oil. And presumptive taxation is very, very closely tied to the performance of non-oil revenue from non-oil taxes.
We have a large pool of taxpayers and potential taxpayers in the informal sector in Nigeria, which can contribute a significant amount to tax collection if they are properly assisted to comply with the tax laws. It is our belief that if we are able to implement a workable presumptive tax regime, it will create improved and easy access to tax system for the large pool of taxpayers in the informal sector.
Section 36, subsection 6 of the Personal Income Tax Amendment Act 2011 provides for a presumptive tax regime and specifically empowers the Federal Minister of Finance to issue regulations to govern the operation of presumptive tax regime in Nigeria. The draft regulations to guide that operation were presented at the workshop. Remember that the Federal Revenue Service collects personal income tax from residents of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, while the State Boards of Internal Revenue collect personal income tax from residents in their respective states. As a backgrounder, the presentation of the regulations was preceded by the presentation of two papers. One of the papers, the one by Mr. B.C. Ali of the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, we had shared with you on that episode we referred to earlier. The second paper was presented by Professor Dakas, C.J. Dakas, and that paper is what we are going to share with you at length on this episode.
Tax authorities have over the years employed a variety of presumptive taxation methods without necessarily calling them presumptive taxation. But for the very first time in the history of the country, the 2011 amendment expressly provides for presumptive taxation in section 36, subsection 6. Now, what is the yardstick for presumptive taxation? If you look at section 36, it says that where for all practical purposes, the income of the taxpayer cannot be ascertained. That's the first requirement. For you to undertake presumptive taxation, you have to establish that the income of the taxpayer cannot be ascertained. And of course, you know that we live in an economy where virtually every transaction, particularly in the informal sector, is cash and carry. The second one is where records are kept, but the records are not kept in a manner that enables you to make proper assessment, then you can have resort to presumptive taxation. These are the two critical categories. Presumptive taxation essentially means that a presumption is made. It is not based on actual income. And in fact, the interesting thing about presumptive taxation is that it assumes that every business and every person has made a profit. Because you're not going to tax losses. If a company runs at a loss, you're not going to tax losses. So, presumptive taxation, actually, there's a sense in which it has an advantage over conventional taxation because it assumes that everybody has made a profit. And you then proceed to tax that profit. Now, there are a number of mechanisms that have been put in place. The basic mode of presumptive taxation is actually standard assessment. And I understand that very many of you are already familiar with what obtains in Ghana, because Ghana was the first African country to pioneer presumptive taxation. And in presumptive taxation, in the specific context of standard assessment, what you have is a situation where there's a fixed lump sum payment that targets specific groups. So, for instance, you find that an enterprise is targeted, or a profession is targeted, or an occupation is targeted, and all you do is to say, you're going to pay 2,500, you're going to pay 10,000. Now, that's the basic mode. But Ghana has not stopped at the level of standard assessment. As you would find in the literature, Ghana has also gone on to look at estimated assessments. The problem with estimated assessment is essentially that there's a great deal of administration involved. It's cumbersome. You know, unlike standard assessment, which is easier to administer, in standard assessment, you essentially simply, you have a flat rate. So it's much easier to say, okay, we're collecting this from here, we're collecting this from here. But once you have estimated assessment, you will first of all have to develop the indicators. What are the indicators that you're going to use? And that's one major challenge. Then the administrators will now have to go and do the collection. You'll have to do the estimate, and then the person may challenge it, and then that's why you would find that a number of documents will show that it is rebuttable, because the person then contests an official determination that is made. But the additional problem actually is that it's open to corruption. Because when you make an estimate, when you make an official determination and the person challenges it, then you begin to negotiate. And you really cannot say with certainty that the officials that you deploy to the field will not compromise. Now, you will find that there's something interesting about the Zimbabwean experience. First, that in the Zimbabwean experience, they don't lump all the various occupations in the informal sector together. Their first category is the transport sector. Okay? The rates that the transport sector pays is different from the one in respect of hairdressers. You see that in number 2. Are we there? If you go to number 3, you will find that the tax payable by the informal traders is also different. And so Zimbabwe has about 8 different categories, numbers 1 to 8. Small-scale miners, cross-border traders, operators of restaurants or bottle stores, cottage industry operators. So Zimbabwe has 8 different categories. And so, because you now have different rates, you will not have the challenge of a vertical inequity. You are not having the hairdresser. Take this example, for instance. The hairdresser pays 1,500 per quarter. Are we there? Now, if you go to the small-scale miner, they pay 2% of gross. If you go to the cross-border trader, pays 10% of the value of the duty. If you go down, all the way down and down, you find that there are differences. But if you look at this also very carefully, you will find that there is an element of horizontal equity in the Zimbabwean experience. If you take the first category, the transport operators, you will find that the person whose vehicle carries 8 to 14 passengers is not paying the same thing with the person whose vehicle carries 15 to 24 passengers. So you'll find that even within the transport sector, not everybody pays the same thing. And it goes down, if you have 37 passengers and above, then you pay separately. But it doesn't even stop there. It then now goes back and looks at the number of vehicles that you have. Of course, it is impossible to find perfect equity. But it is important that you calibrate this or you graduate this in a manner that helps you to be able to engender vertical and horizontal equity. Vertical in the sense that you are dealing with different categories of professionals or different occupations. Horizontal in the sense that you are dealing with one profession, but you need to realize that not everybody in that profession earns the same thing. So my advice is that we need to learn from the Zimbabwean experience that instead of lumping all the businesses together, you should categorize them and prescribe flat rates depending on each of the professions or the categories that you have captured.
Professor Dakas thereafter proceeded to look at the draft presumptive tax regulations clause by clause. There were also interventions from the floor.
I think this is something very good that the FIRS is doing. The presumptive tax is bringing more people into the tax net. And I think one good thing about that is that we are mobilizing citizens for accountability in the use of public resources. Because if more people are paying taxes, what it means is that these people would just naturally ask for accountability in the management of resources, which is missing. My main question is around multiple taxation. The law says that in the FCT, the Federal Inland Revenue Service will deal with the collection and all of that. And at the state level, the state inland revenue authorities. My question is this. The Lagos guy talked about levies and charges, that most of the payments people make now are usually in the context of levies and charges. But the prof also said that presumptive tax over the years have been collected, but in the guise of other, more or less like nomenclature. Let me use that word. These charges at this, at the local government level, at the state level, they are more or less taxes. That is what they are. For example, we work with a lot of rural women, rural farmers. And at every point of the way, they are paying one level of charge or the other. And whether we like it or not, these charges are put there by the revenue authorities at that level. So when the presumptive tax comes on board, how do we intend to reconcile these charges, these levies, and the presumptive tax regime? Because
my reaction, the whole debate made things that is being said several times that charges, user charges, are different from levies, and that levies are different from taxes. If you use a car park, you will pay. If you board an aeroplane and you land, there are charges to be paid. If you don't board that aeroplane, you won't pay. But taxes are general. We leave that to the experts to discuss, but that is a matter for another day. With the foregoing as a background, one may well ask, what is the situation out there that the tax authorities can build an effective presumptive tax regime upon? Here are some takes from the streets.
Do you pay tax?
I'm paying tax.
What kind of tax do you pay?
First one, we are calling ticket every day on behalf of our local government.
Okay.
Yeah, secondly, we are paying tax for this our unit, Abuja unit. So, and so on and so forth.
So how do you people keep records? You know your business is daily. So how do you keep records? Is it daily, weekly, or monthly? For you to know what you get at the end, for you to be able to know how to pay your taxes.
Actually, I'm keeping it. I am keeping my own every day for me to know the record by weekly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think they can do? It will be easier for you to pay your tax.
So they have to give us rest of mind. That's it.
Do you keep records basically on your own? And how do you keep your records? Weekly, monthly, or daily?
Okay, I'm a sole proprietor and I do check my sales daily per se, but I have that challenge of collating the whole thing and kind of check it based on monthly way, based on accounting principle. That is one of the challenges I have, but I do check my sales and expenses every day.
How do you pay your taxes?
I don't pay based on records per se, but being a member of association, Ikeja Autos Papers Association, located in Ikeja, we pay flat rate of 2,006 or thereabout. So, and it's a flat rate, we pay it annually.
The tax authorities, are you happy with them when they come? How do they interact with you? And what do you think can be done? How do you think they can help you to pay your taxes easily?
I'm not too much happy with tax authority in the sense that I found out that they are only interested in coming at that particular time in which they believe that is the tax paying period. They failed to come back, and because when they came sometime, we tell them, look, we need mobile toilets, and immediately they collect the money, they will not see them anymore. So, and in the other side of it, I'm happy because the evidence of tax payment can be seen using, for example, in medical roads towards Computer Village. There are a good road that have been constructed there, and I'm very happy. And I have no doubt that is work of taxpayers. So in that aspect, I'm happy with them. But they have to do more. And the last thing I want to say is that I discovered that most of tax agencies and authority, they only, they fail to recognize the median income earners. Most of their formulations, their rules and regulation is for the rich, and it favors them. So, and it's not supposed to be so. Because I believe normally government is supposed to be care for the less privileged. They're supposed to care for those coming up, and so that everybody will have a form of interaction to have equilibrium in our society.
Perhaps it was talk like this that Mrs. Elizabeth Douglas was reacting to at the workshop.
To a large extent, while the taxing authorities are improving on the way they administer and collect tax, this is always going to be a challenge, and I don't think it's a question that you can answer. You can't promise a taxpayer that, okay, this tax is going to be used by the state this way, or it's going to be used by the government this way. That's not a fair question to be put to you, but you will be the ones to ask the question. So what I would encourage is that, on your own part, feed the information up, and then on your own part, try and just let the taxpayers know it's their responsibility, and as they contribute more and pay tax, they get more right to demand for accountability and better governance.
It is expected that very soon the regulations will come into effect, and that the different tax authorities, in the case of the Federal Capital Territory, the FIRS, in the case of the states, the State Board of Internal Revenue, will swing into action. Before we go, our guide to FIRS offices in your area.
Welcome to Know Your Tax Office. Are you in Cross River State? The FRS has 2 micro and small taxpayers offices in Cross River State, the Income MSTO and the Calabar MSTO. The Calabar MSTO is located at Plot 7, IBB Way, opposite Margaret Ekpo International Airport, Calabar. Mr. A.T. Riemann is the tax controller of the Calabar MSTO.
The Calabar office controls 6 local government areas out of the 18 local government areas we have. We have Akampa, Odupani, Calabar Municipal, Calabar South, Akpatui, and Bakassi local government area.
The Calabar office also houses the Government Business Tax Office for Cross River State. The Ecom MSTO is located at number 10 Calabar Road, Ecom, Cross River State. Mr. T.A. Obang is a tax controller, Ecom MSTO.
How many offices does FRS have in Cross River?
We have 2 offices in Cross River, the Ecom MSTO and of course the Calabar MSTO. The Ecom MSTO covers the central and northern senatorial district of Cross River, and that is made up of 12 local governments. 12? Yes. That includes BRC, Abi, Yako, Ecom, Obubra, Etun, Obudu, Obanleku, Yala, Ogoja, and Bekwara.
Do you want to acquire taxpayer's identification number? Feel free to approach any of these 2 offices. It takes only a few minutes and it is free.
If a taxpayer requires taxpayer identification number TIN or any other thing, they can begin and end in your MSTO?
Yes, they can, especially if they are from within that area of my jurisdiction. It's a thing of less than 10 minutes this time around, especially with the improvement in the web portal network. So it's as easy as anything. It's just by press of the button and you have your TIN. And any other service that is required, I think Ecom MSTO is a model for service delivery.
What does it take to acquire TIN? For corporate bodies, you need the CAC registration number, the name of the company, the registered address, that is, registered address with CAC, if different, your business address, the date of incorporation, your line of business, the GSM number of a principal officer, and the email address of the company. For individuals and enterprises, you need the name of the individual, name of employer, a form of identification, which might be any of the following: your staff ID, international passport, national ID, and national driver's license. You also have to provide the date of employment, your line of business, the GSM number, and your email address.
There you are. Taxpayer identification number, TIN, is obtainable free of charge and it is easy to obtain. Remember, do not use a go-between. Go by yourself to the nearest tax office and acquire your TIN. I want to thank you most sincerely for watching today's episode of the program. We hope that in our own little way, we have been able to further enlighten and educate you on the workings of the Nigerian tax system. Have a good week ahead.